Hey guys, my name is Clay, and today we're going to be talking about voice control, where it started, where it's at, and where it's going. Let's get started. You're probably already familiar with a lot of common voice control mechanisms, like Alexa, Siri, the Google Assistant, and even Cortana, no matter how annoying she can be. This area of human-computer interaction has experienced a lot of rapid growth in the past few years. Even though they can be kind of frustrating at times, in certain areas of life they can add a lot of convenience. So in pop culture there are some examples of voice control or voice interaction with the computer. Probably one of the most famous ones is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Open the pod bay doors. The very first computerized voice control was invented by Bell Labs in 1952. It was called the Audrey system, and it could only recognize 10 digits, 0 through 9, and it was only recognized by a designated speaker, such as a telephone operator. The technology was still very primitive at the time, but it was the first step in getting us to where we are today. From the Audrey system of 1952, we see some incremental changes leading up into the 1980s. The 1980s was the start of the home computer era, and as such, computers were getting a lot smaller and a lot faster. But they still required a lot of horsepower to recognize voice commands. Alright, now check out this really cool video from 1989, developed by Bell Laboratories again. They're showing off a machine that has 64 parallel processors and a recognition dictionary of only about 130 words.
This is an airline flight information system. This personal computer has a vocabulary of 132 words, which are recognized. Unfortunately, it is quite computation intensive. This parallel processor has 64 digital signal processing chips. These chips, it develops a peak processing rate of over 500 million floating point operations per second.
This is the AT&T Bell Laboratories Flight Information System. How may I help you?
I would like to go from New York to Chicago on Friday morning.
United Airlines Flight 3 leaves New York JFK at 10 a.m., arrives in Chicago O'Hare at 11:18 a.m.
Alright, so moving into the 1990s, we see voice recognition moving into consumer products. So we have stuff like those dolls that listen to you and respond to what you say, all the way up to Dragon Dictation and Dragon Naturally Speaking, which is still around to this day. And from the 1990s right up until the early 2010s, we don't see a lot of new innovations in voice control. At least the development wasn't as rapid as it has been since the early 2010s. Innovations in cloud computing and just computing power in general have contributed to the rapid development of voice controls since the early 2010s. In that period, we see the introduction of Siri on the iPhone and the Google Assistant, which started off as Google Voice Search. And then later on, we also have Alexa and Cortana trying to do the same job as well. Alright, so now that we're familiar with some of the consumer products of voice control, let's look at some of the enterprise solutions that voice control is helping out with. For example, did you know that some hospitals are testing out voice dictation for medical record entry? This is one of those areas where voice control can really shine. Throughout their day, doctors can come into contact with a lot of potentially dangerous substances. And because they're healthcare providers, they need to make sure that their hygiene is of utmost importance. Because of that, entering medical records with a keyboard and mouse might not be the most hygienic solution. So if they're able to use their voice to do the same thing, that makes their whole day a lot more hygienic. And it also benefits all the patients that they interact with as well. There are some security concerns regarding voice control, especially the ones that are always listening. For example, some researchers found out that voice control assistants can be controlled by inaudible signals. Now, normally these signals can't be heard by the human ear, but because of some math or whatever, they're able to be heard and recognized as spoken commands by voice assistants. And for some people, having a device in their home that's always listening to them is a little bit creepy. In my home, I set all of the Google Homes that we have to chime whenever they're listening and whenever they stop listening. Okay, Now let's move into the future of voice control. Voice control has a ton of new growth opportunities. Because these voice assistants are connected to the internet all the time, they're able to get constant feedback on things to improve. And because of that, they're also improving their functionality every day. For example, when I first got my Google Home at the end of 2017, I wasn't able to combine more than one command at a time. In order to do that, I needed to get a third-party companion app that would combine those for me. But now I'm able to string a bunch of commands together with routines, and I can also combine two commands by using the word "and" between them. Turn off the lights and play Pose on Netflix.
Okay, Pose from Netflix. Playing on living room TV. Sure, turning off 8 lights.
Another growth area for voice control is natural language processing. This is at the core of the voice assistants and enables them to do what they need to do. They need to be able to understand your commands and follow up on them. And there's also the very funny issue of some voice recognition software not being able to understand some accents.
Cancel.
Pear.
You can say pair. Select device.
You said pear. Pear.
Do you want to add or delete a device?
Yes. Add a device.
Pardon?
Add a device.
Please say the name of the country.
Georgia,
Please say the name of the desired country.
Georgia,
Please say the name of a country. For example, England.
Georgia,
Please say.
So according to a recent survey done by Google, they found that up to 70% of all voice searches are done in natural speaking language. This opens a lot of new doors for research and innovation in machine learning and artificial intelligence. There's also the potential for voice control to be a great asset to accessibility. Google recently released an accessibility app that pretty much allows you to control every aspect of your phone with your voice. And for the folks that they interviewed who don't have a lot of control over their arms and legs, it really makes a big difference in allowing them to do the things that they want to do in their daily life. Okay, now this last one might be a little uncomfortable for some of us out there, but there's pretty much an untapped market in voice controls for advertising and marketing. Now we have to be very careful with this because nobody really wants to have their voice control telling them sponsored results for pizza if they're looking for a coffee shop. Only about half of the voice control users really want to get any sort of sponsored results or branding in their voice control results. But those who do really just want it to optimize convenience and to find deals that are relevant to them. So you can advertise on voice assistants, but be very careful about it. Alright, so in conclusion, over the past 70 years, voice control has come to the forefront of human-computer interaction. And it's really changed the way that we interact with computers as a whole. It definitely allows for a more personal and intimate interaction with computers. For example, about 41% of people who have a voice assistant in their home, they say that it's like talking to another person or a friend. And there is a lot of growth potential in the areas of accessibility, consumer convenience and marketing, as well as AI and natural language processing. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.